Hi, and welcome back to Mad About Cards and Crafts and another Brutus Monroe design team project. Today we're partnering with Therm O Web. I'm going to be sharing 3 cards featuring Deco foil. I do have some toner cards. I apologize. I did mix them up a bit. I didn't realize they were 2 separate packs. So I have combined both the Really Radiant and the Floral Fantasy 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch toner panels. That's a Floral Fantasy. Here is a Really Radiant. There's like a rainbow and a couple other designs in that Really Radiant pack. I also have the 8.5 by 11 inch toner sheets. Now for the 8.5 by 11, you only get 1 sheet of each design, so you're going to get 4 of those toner sheets in your package. You can choose to use them like in a slimline card, or if you wanted to scrapbook, you can also cut the panels into 4s and you would get 4 different card bases for that. Here are the transfer sheets. These are the copper ripple transfer sheets. Aren't they absolutely beautiful? Look at that texture in there. And the one to the left is the pewter ripples. We're going to jump right into our project. I do want to say that my first foiling, I underfoiled. I'm going to show you that panel, so I am going to use a shim with my mink machine. That has nothing to do with the Deco foil or with the toner sheets. That's just what my machine preferred. Here I'm cutting it using a Spellbinder's cutting pad. It helps me keep my paper straight, or my foil straight. Ugly side is going to face the toner panel, so you can see that the foil side is up. I'm going to use a piece of copy paper. There's my shim, and I'm going to run this through my mink machine. Now you saw that I did use that brush. That brush does dust off any of the dust that I may have on my toner panel and on my foil sheet. Here's a look at that underfoiling on the right side. And then this is the pewter panel that I ran through earlier. Isn't that gorgeous? And finally, when this comes out, I'm going to cool it off for just a moment. I'm going to kind of lightly rub over the top of it to make sure that everything is nice and adhered, and you're going to see just how beautiful this is. Look at that foiling. You've got some rainbow goodness. That copper is just gorgeous. I did foil 3 panels, and I'm going to work with 2. So this is the underfoiled panel. I was still able to use it. It wasn't terrible. It was just a little underfoiled. And I'm using some Distress Oxide in Rusty Hinge. I'm using it really intensely around the edges, and then what's left on my brush, I will go over the center. I do wipe this down with a towel, so just a paper towel to clean off that foil. This BU stamp set, that floral circle, I did heat emboss it using the embossing glaze in Rusty Hinge. I cut it out using my brother's Scan and Cut. That's going to cover or camouflage those spots on that foiled sheet. And I'm using a sentiment from the Extra Sentimental stamp set over in the Brutus Monroe store that simply says hello. I added a little bit of that Rusty Hinge to the center of that circle. I'm using some Rusty Hinge embossing glaze over that word hello, and I did heat set it with my heat tool. You know I love a little bit of dimension, so I have some fun foam here. I did cut my panel down to 4 by 5 1/4 inches, and my fun foam is just a little bit smaller. I have a top folding 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. I'm going to add this little decorative floral to the center, and that's going to cover up that underfoiled area. I am going to set this aside and come back to it. Here is the Mother's Bouquet. I'm going to do about 2 or 3 minutes of Copic coloring. I did stamp it onto Copic friendly paper, and I used my Brutus Monroe Raven ink for this. I'm doing a flicking motion from the center out using my darkest color, which is an E9. I'll come in from the edge of the petal in to the center using, I believe it's an E7, and finally I'll do the same motion coming from the edge to the inside with my E4. In order to add a little more depth to this, I'll take my E9 again, and where all those petals meet, I'm going to really darken those shadows. I'll finally go over the entire image with the E4 to blend it out just a little bit. I feel like I still have a little bit of depth missing, so I will bring back in that E7, and once I add that, I'm finished with this petal. Now I will list the other colors that I did use on the leaves and the other floral in the description box below in case you're interested in that, but we are going to move along. I did cut this out using my brother's Scan and Cut, and then I added some foam tape to the back of my image. I've used some Deco foil transfer gel. Now I don't have the Duo. If you use the Duo, then you don't need a hot foiling machine. You can actually use your die cutting machine to adhere the foil. I just have the regular the first Deco foil transfer gel that came out, and so that's what I'm going to use on my card panel today. This card panel is going to measure 8.5 by 3.5 inches. There's a look at that transfer gel. I do use the Tangled loop stencil to add my Deco gel. And here I foiled it using that copper ripples. I had to think about that. The copper ripples foil. And look at how beautiful that is. Now we're going to start working on this panel and adding a little bit more pizzazz to it. So I started off with my fossilized amber. I'm using my, I think it's spiced marmalade right here. Oh no, dried marigold. I added dried marigold. I felt that it still needed a little bit more depth because that copper is just so rich. So I added a little bit more of that rusty hinge, and I love the way that that turned out. Of course, I love my splatters, so I'm using my gold watercolors to add a little bit more of that gold sparkle to this panel. And this is called Quilted Lace, and I have Distress Oxide in Forest Moss. Because my leaves have that green, I felt like I needed a little bit more green on this card panel. I have a 8 3/4 by 3 3/4 craft card base. I added both my panel and my floral, and again my floral does have foam tape to it, and here I'm adding a little more interest with a white gel pen to the center of the florals. Here is my third and final panel. I started off using picked raspberry. Now I have some oh my goodness, I always forget the name of this, so I'm going to skip it. Seedless preserves. I have seedless preserves, and finally I have some aged mahogany. I'm going to blend this together. I'm going to use a piece of vellum, and I'm going to stamp another sentiment on the vellum. The vellum's cut to about 2.5 inches. I'm going to use some sterling embossing powder and stamp the words "Hey Gorgeous," which I thought was perfect for this. And then I'm going to wrap that vellum around the side of this card. Once I do that, I will add just a little flourish from the Judy's Wreath. There you can see how you get that shine back by just using a clean paper towel. I'm going to cut this down to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. I do have another 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base right there to the right, and I'm going to glue that panel directly to that once I wrap this vellum around it. I do add some little jewels to add a little bling bling to this card, and then we're going to go back to the first card that we started with, and I'm going to add some gems. I do end up coloring my rhinestones, and I'll show that on screen. What I didn't show on screen was my slimline card. I did add the word or the sentiment "hello" to it. I used some of that rusty hinge and went over just some paper. I cut my sentiment down that says hello, and I added that with a little foam to the top of that slimline card as well. So here's where I'm adding that little flourish. Here's where I'm adding those jewels. I am going to color them with some of the markers. I believe I use the E9. I think I use the E7. And then I use a YR marker to color in that amber gold color that you see right there. This is an E19. That was the darkest color I used, was an E19. And then I'm going to do a little bit more embellishment with that Quilted Lace stencil because I felt like that circle just needed something a little bit more. And those are my 3 cards for today. I'm going to show you some close-ups of those cards. I want to thank you so much for watching. There are other Deco foil products available over in the Brutus Monroe store. I will link what I used. Look at the beautiful sparkle and shine on that copper and pewter ripples foil. Love it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks so much for watching.